So where would you like to start?
I would love to start with any advice for a 45-year-old navigating perimenopause with a 4-year-old.
Whew.
That's a lot.
First of all, congratulations.
Yeah.
And are you finding this, Cynthia, that there's more and more women in perimenopause having their first child? So they are 40, 42, 44, 48, and they have a toddler at home. And it's like, what is it? Is it postpartum? Is it perimenopause? Like which one is it? Are you finding more and more of that in your community?
Absolutely. But to be completely transparent, I had my second at 36. Mm-hmm. And I would probably guess a lot of the symptoms that I experienced at 36 as a thin phenotype PCOSer were probably more a reflection of low progesterone that was just magnified in that kind of postpartum state. And so I'm particularly sensitive to people like this because perimenopause is a wild ride. I mean, it is not for the faint of heart. And I think about, the additional demands for all of us with little people at home. And, you have to feed them and bathe them and dress them. And there's just a lot of hands-on
sleep. There's no sleep.
The hands-on parenting piece. And I think not enough of us talk about the wonderful, deliriously tiring aspects of parenting. Like I say all the time, I would go back to that stage in a heartbeat because I've loved every stage. But I think many of us don't talk about how hard it is. And I say this whether you work outside the home or not, that being a parent is, in many instances, especially when you have preschool or toddler or early elementary school age children, is exhausting, truly. But it is this wonderful dance that you have where you're trying to find some degree of balance. And then you add in the fluctuations of hormones that are starting to shift in your late 30s, early 40s. And I think it could make it even more challenging. Like I reflect back on I'm 54, even 10 years ago, that's when I really started to feel perimenopause, like in my toes. I was like, something is up. And my kids at that time were 10 and 8.
Yeah.
And it was tough. So I think it's even more challenging when you have younger kiddos, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I find myself lately thinking about just being nostalgic with, like my kids now are teenagers and, wanting to do normal teenage stuff, which is like hanging out with their friends, and they're really entrenched in their extracurricular activities. I'm like, oh, there was a time not too long ago when I was like everything to them, and there can be that nostalgia. But to your point, I was also so bagged. I was so tired. Even if they had regular sleep, like one cold would throw off their sleeping, and the demand that emotional and physical and psychological demand that pulls on you. So for her, as a 45-year-old woman navigating perimenopause, I mean, a couple truths that we know is that, as you already mentioned, her progesterone levels are low. So they're steadily declining and have been for probably about a decade at this point. Mm-hmm. So she's probably going to find that her resilience and the things that sort of set her off, the bar for that is going to be much lower. Like that tripwire is going to be much lower than what it otherwise might be. So just being aware of that. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, but one of my saving graces, like totally got into fitness for aesthetics, but stayed for the mental fitness and the mental strength and the clarity that it gives me. So in whatever small little 5-minute moment that you have, if there can be some body weight squats or some sit-ups or some push-ups, even with the baby, if you're like your 4-year-old, like, I was still carrying my 4-year-olds, you walk across, like maybe you're holding them, right? So you can do, squats, lunges with the babies. I used to do something with my kids called kitty bell. What did I call them? a kitty bell swings, so kettlebell swings. So I would like take the kid and I would like sort of strap them into my arms, and then I would swing them up and down, and I would do a little squat in between. So those are my kitty bell swings. So there's like little ways that you can get in activity, which I think obviously is going to be great for, your blood sugar regulation and your energy, but it's also going to be a way for you to connect. Like 4-year-olds are rambunctious, right? It's like they want to run around, and so you can match them and play with them by integrating some movement. So that's how I would approach that. And then maybe the other thing I would say is just be really gentle with yourself. We're so hard. Myself included, so hard on ourselves at every stage of the parenting game. And, the extracurricular activities and am I doing the right thing? Oh, I snapped at my husband or snapped at my kid. Like we're so hard on ourselves. So I would just say as much as you can, being merciful, with yourself and giving yourself some grace, I think is maybe the most important thing. Nobody wants to hear that, but I would say just, giving yourself a break.
Yeah. I would say, we both have all boys, and I made it really clear to my boys that being physically active was important for all of us. And so we would go to the park, we would, go to the library, we would, walk through the neighborhood. We had a lot of trails. And so, for me, it was this physicality, like how can I get my physical needs met with being physically active amongst doing activities with them and telling them how important it was for their bodies. Like you sleep better when you exercise. And so I sleep better when I exercise. I think the one thing that I would say is that a lot of 45-year-olds are actually at a point where they should consider the addition of hormone replacement therapy. So even if it is for 1 week out of the month, buffering the effects of that drop in progesterone.
Yeah.
You already have less circulating progesterone in the luteal phase, but many people, even if it's 50, 100 grams of oral progesterone therapy can be very, very helpful, can help with the really heavy cycles, a lot of the estrogen dominance type symptoms that we experience that for a lot of women are really bothersome. The bloating, breast tenderness, very heavy cycles. I used to call them the crime scene periods, but all those things are real issues. And the other thing I would say is at 45, if you are drinking, I would say just be mindful of the impact of alcohol on your sleep quality, because sleep is so foundational to our health. That's the other side of that loss of progesterone, more anxiety, more depression, more potentiality of insomnia. If you feel like when you drink alcohol, it's eroding your sleep quality, you may want to cut back or eliminate. And I think we have this mommy drinking culture. Maybe this is a larger conversation.
Yeah.
This mommy drinking culture. And there's no judgment when I say this, but many women, in order to cope with the stress of parenting, sometimes will get accustomed to having a glass, 2, 3, 4 a night of wine or a beverage. And cumulatively over time, we know that there are very little to few positive net effects of the consumption of alcohol at this point. And knowing what it's doing to us in terms of our sleep quality and our metabolism of hormones and detoxification in the body, if you're noticing that, that night that I have a glass of wine, once the kids go to bed, those are the nights my sleep is worse, just understanding that is a byproduct of ethanol. And, our bodies prioritize it as a toxin first and foremost. So just something to consider. And if you're not drinking, great. If you are drinking, just something to consider.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have come to maybe a harder stance, which I know people don't like, but I don't actually see the value in alcohol. I think that there's a sensitization too, where alcohol tends to hit differently in midlife than maybe what it did in your 20s and your 30s. And to your point, like the liver is going to prioritize that to turn it into its intermediates and to be able to expel it from the body. But I really don't see if it's a coping strategy, if you feel like it's the only way that you can unwind, I know that there are different ways that you can find strategies to cope with the stressors in your life. I do think that that's a maladaptive, and I'm saying this with love. It's like, I'm not calling you out, I'm calling you up. It's like, I think that there can be a better strategy that you can find to deal with the stressors of raising a child, or maybe, whatever the situation might be. I would take a hard look at what are some of the other things that you might think about replacing that glass of wine with? Maybe there's a walking club. Maybe there's a pickleball. Like, we know in midlife, pickleball becomes all of our personalities to some extent,
Yes.
right? Is there something that you can find, a community, like a way of bonding with other people, other mommies, right? Other moms with 4-year-olds. You can have something that's not alcohol. I really feel like in terms of as you were saying, like the metabolic consequences, certainly body composition consequences as well, if you're concerned with that. Sleep, as you've mentioned, energy. Yeah, I don't really feel like there's a place for alcohol for women in midlife at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it was 2022 or 2023, but Huberman did a really excellent review on the effects of alcohol and the research behind alcohol. And I remember it probably took me 2 days to listen to it because his podcasts are so long. And after I finished, I said to my husband, I really think you should listen to this. And he looked at me and he said, I have 1 or 2 drinks a week. And he's like, I enjoy them so much. I'm not willing to give it up. And I said, oh, I'm not doing it from that perspective. I just think that I was schooled, especially in cardiology, when we were telling patients, oh, you should have a glass of red wine every night. Yeah. There are all these benefits. And the joke's on us because you'd have to drink gallons of wine to get the resveratrol benefits that we used to tell patients. And so, much to your point, sometimes I have patients that just simply eliminating alcohol from their diet is what leads to weight loss because they just don't realize the long-term net impact of this inflammatory substance, which is making it harder for their body to be able to properly regulate their blood sugar and process the foods they're consuming. And so I agree with you. Just having an honest conversation with yourself, I think is really valuable. And for full transparency, I gave up alcohol, not that I ever had a problem with it during the pandemic because I was such a social drinker. I would have like a martini once a month. I just said, I don't need it. And what's amazing to me, and I don't know if this has been your experience, but not in the health and wellness community, but when I go to events or business events, outside of that community, people are incredibly triggered if you say you don't drink. Yeah. I don't know why. I always say, listen, you do you. If that works for you, that's great. But I find that sometimes surprising.
Yeah, I have people always, when we go to dinner, it's like, oh, what are you going to get? Like, get what you want. I don't care. Like
water with a lime.
Yeah. I'm not going to judge you. If you get the burger and fries, like fine, I have burger and fries here and there. Like get what you want just because I happen to really talk a lot about nutrition and really care about it. Because we're out for dinner, I'm definitely not going to pick apart your meal. Like have whatever you want. And like, especially if you're out at dinner, the first thing that people bring you is the wine, the wine menu as well. So I'm like, I'm just going to have some sparkling water with lime. That's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So I think hopefully this advice for this 45-year-old navigating perimenopause with a 4-year-old, hopefully some of that is tangible for you.